Just gonna poke my head outside.
Oh.
Yeah, getting that call from my word response.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think we should probably get this started for second round of questions with staff sent regarding the upcoming restructure. And I know some constituents from senators had some questions to ask. So Bob, thank you again for being here today. And if I'm missing anything else before we get started? Okay. All right, does any senators have any questions from their constituents that they'd like to start with?
I was thinking about this more, and I wanted to know what was announced all before you came. What was the deciding factor on hiring Deloitte, and when did you decide to do that? Because I know we answered that survey on our fees. That was already after we had already hired Deloitte. Correct. But do you know what was the driving force and what was the decision that administration said we need to look at staffing? When was that? And what was the decision to make that?
Sure. So to your point, it's before me, so I can only go off of what I've kind of heard through the process, if you will, is that this is tangentially related to the restructures that have already happened. And so therefore it was a matter of then how do we look at staffing within these reorg areas to be able to make sure that we're efficient. So when I arrived, they had the RFP already out, but not successfully completed. So that was one of the first things that we did, was to be able to complete that RFP and then start from there. To your point, part of the Deloitte deliverables was that administrative survey to be able to see what was going on. Understand that was all self-reported, you know, so if we had an individual that did AP card, they may say that they do some finance, which they may not actually, you know, so just, so we take all of that into it as we look at this.
Is it a year and a half?
No, I haven't been here that long. So it would have probably been right about a year ago, or I think it was I think we're a little past a year right now. So I'm gonna say that was, no, we were
Like
that,
end of 2020.
it was like December, January.
I think that's right.
All of 22, very beginning of 23, maybe.
Between November of 22 and I think to January 20. Or to,
So when you say the organizational restructuring that we did, was that back? So we did that in 2016, there were changes. We did 2 years of changes. 1 year was the cuts, and then the next year was, you were a program, if you were 10, you had to find a new home.
If you were what?
If you were a program, if you were of 10, you needed to find a new home.
No, so this is before me, so when, like some of the A&S and engineering pieces kind of split and all of that, that would have been separate from those, correct?
Yeah, well, it was a result of And it was that was a voluntary basis of what they decided. Engineering had done it first and did their own ways of how they wanted to restructure, but then it was,
No, I meant like the program movements.
oh,
So like
yeah.
math and statistics went over
was-
to
yeah,
engineering.
2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
I, Senator Grossinger, I saw your hand on Zoom.
Thank you, President Como. My question from my constituents in regards to this is, have we reached out to other universities that have used the Deloitte services and what they thought of the results, I guess?
So part of the study did go through 3 or 4 different groups that have used Deloitte. We go out in the larger scope just to be able to look at, we'll call it business partners or shared services across most higher ed, especially in the larger state institutions. There is the large majority that use this type of structure specifically for human resources. But I'm trying to think of, I don't know that we've had the information provided to us, if you will, in regards to how those other schools with Deloitte have changed and or we're in the process of. And then we've been monitoring and watching them, if you will, electronically in regards to what they're doing and how they're moving along. For example, University of Kentucky, Washington, I'd have to go through to be able to look at the remainder of those, but I don't know if that answers your question.
It does to a certain degree. Do you think it would be worth our time as the staff senate to maybe reach out to those staff senates there to kind of get their input?
I mean, that would be completely up to you guys from that standpoint, to be able to figure out the best way to be able to make sure that it's successful.
Jesse, did you have anything else you want to ask?
No, I was just gonna, I didn't quite hear that last part that he said.
Yeah, if that's something we want to do, that's something we can do on our time if we felt worth looking at other staff senates, see how that went. Did
Okay.
you get that, Jesse?
Yes, I got that part. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good.
Molly?
Thank you, President Como. So I have a constituent who wrote that we are hearing from faculty that have attended faculty senate meetings that HR is planning on lowering the cap on vacation and sick hours that can be accrued. So basically, she's wondering, we have staff members that are very concerned about this trend of balancing the budget shortfall on the backs of employees. If they're planning on implementing this, what would be the timeline? Because we have staff that want to leave before that becomes a policy.
So this is the first time I'm hearing of this one, so if it's been communicated in staff senate in any way, shape, or form, I'm not sure where it's coming from.
You said faculty senate, Molly?
Okay.
Okay.
She's not sure. I don't know if I didn't reach out to this person individually, so I didn't follow up about what faculty senate meeting or any of that. So do you think that that is just a rumor or?
Yes.
Okay.
Megan and Nicole.
Sure, I have a couple of questions from constituents, but one is changes take effect July 1st, 2024. Will changes to job descriptions and duties be significant enough for any of the positions to change their core competencies? If so, will these changes to competencies midway through the performance evaluation cycle impact staff? Who will be responsible for determining if competencies and goals were met?
So individuals that would be moving, if you will, we're going to shared services. So their roles and responsibilities, right? So right now they are doing finance, budget and finance, human resources, mission driven, so on and so forth. And they go to one of those specific ones. So meaning that they're just mission driven, they're just human resources or they're just budget and finance. Obviously, their roles and responsibilities would change from that standpoint. Management structure may change, may not change, depending on which one of those three areas the person would fall into. And so therefore, performance in general is one of those items that we need to be able to really look at. So one, to be able to say, okay, it's mid-cycle, how do we make sure that we evaluate? And two is that, especially when you get into the HR and budget and finance, we've got a solid line and a dotted line. And so how do we ensure that we can have both of those individuals provide input within that performance review? So if you're reporting to human resources, but you're sitting in a college or a unit helping support, how do they have input into that as well? So there is work that needs to be done there, but I think that may help.
Megan, did you have anything else you want to?
Sure, so you had mentioned in the first meeting, other peer institutions, some state land grant and flagship universities classify certain types of staff as state employees rather than employees of the University of Colorado would be one such example. So staff at Colorado, they're not eligible for TIAA craft. They have to go through the Colorado Public Employees Retirement System, stuff like that. Is there any threat of University of Wyoming employees becoming state employees?
We're all saying we're around those lines. So we are all state employees.
Right, but like, so the way that the classification compensation structure works, like a business manager would be like a very executive specific. And there might be state business managers, but like they're considered university employees versus like in that pay scale and stuff like that versus a state of Wyoming employee, and they accrue vacation and like have certain like a benefits package that's unique to the University of Wyoming versus, you know, if they were doing something for Homeland Security over in Cheyenne.
Gotcha. So tell me if this kind of helps us. When I look at the Colorado system, if you will, they are different from us. They actually all, I think, have all different insurance programs and such that they're not state brand like EGI, but they do only have the one retirement, like most state employees except for higher ed. So higher ed, including the colleges, have the ability to be able to also have TIAA. They also, unlike some of the state employees, we have the ability to be able to, as opposed to a 9-9 split in beyond rounding for retirement, we're able to pay for some of the employee side of it as well to drop that 9% down to 3% and some change, which there are very few state agencies within Wyoming that have that. So from that standpoint, there is no changes made. So this isn't a request or a plea to be able to change anything besides a handful of individuals that would be more HR related, more budget and finance related, and then with those roles being rolled out of some of the others to be able to allow for some more mission driven access to be able to move the university forward. That help?
Yes. Okay, I have a couple of questions, so let's see if I can phrase my first one to get the point across that I've been asked. So I've had a couple of people that have expressed concerns about the shared services model with HR, finance, and budget.
Budget finance, we want, I think you're thinking of research.
Anyway, with the shared service model, there are 3 units in there. And the concern that I have been hearing is where it comes from there being a solid reporting line and then a dotted reporting line. So the solid reporting line for staff would go up directly through the shared services model. If we use budget or if we use finance, it would be to a finance manager, and the dotted line would be over to the college, correct? So what I'm hearing as a concern is who is responsible for that employee? Who does the employee actually, report to? Do they report up through finance through that solid line? Or do they report to their college through the dotted line? Do they have to report, are they reporting to both? And if they're reporting to both, who is their actual manager? And who is the manager side, who is responsible for ensuring that said employee is doing what they're supposed to, accomplishing their goals and so forth.
Yep, so, easy answer to this is through the solid line, right? So we've got somebody that is in the HR shared services, they're reporting up through human resources. Now, with that said, is we need to be able to change the paradigm in regards to where we can take down the silos. So we need to be able to work together, right? So they need to be, they're gonna still be sitting in the same location. And we still need to be able to keep those relationships and such, but the reporting line would change. What that allows for, if you will, is more access to some of the toys. So therefore, we can open up if an individual's on the human resources side, there's more human resources pieces within WildCloud to be able to open up, to be able to help streamline activities and be able to make sure that we can continue to progress from that standpoint. Same with budget and finance, new training, all of those type of things to be able to execute on what's needed in those areas. Standard work that we'll need to be able to make sure that we execute on, to be able to make sure, for example, I think last week we terminated and/or ended assignment for 287 people that just shouldn't have been in the system anymore. So those standard works that just aren't being done across campus.
So if that reporting structure is vertical through the solid line, how are the cost center approvers that would be through a dotted line, how do they fit into that process, to that structure?
Yeah, so it's a system piece. So to your point, that is one of the items that we've been working through, and I'm confident that we'll be able to solve it. So if I'm budget and finance and I'm creating a rec, it still needs to route through the proper individuals, and that will.
Which may not be part of that solid line. They may be they'll be one of the dotted lines.
It wouldn't be the solid.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah, so we have that in our, to be able to make sure that we get about it. Because to your point is realistically, they're acting in the transactional basis to be able to execute, however you want to look at it, the P card transaction, the PO, the procurement piece, but it still needs to be able to route through the proper entity for approvals and such. That would not come through budget or finance or human resources.
So that is something that right now is being worked through a definite plan of action. A defined, let me change my verbiage there, a defined plan of action has not been set yet. But it is in process.
So no, there isn't. I can't tell you exactly how that'll work. There's a couple of areas where we already do it. And so I don't know if we'll utilize that or if we have to build something more robust.
The second item that has come to mind, that has been brought up through employees is this is more of a statement than a question for you. But there seems to be a fear, and I think it goes right along with what Jeannie was expressing at the beginning of our meeting this morning. With people, with staff that have been here, have been at the university for many years and have gone through different restructurings. And when they think of restructuring or a change, they think back to the 2016 change. And there seems to be a concern on campus that some of the problems and issues that took place back in during that change and that era are going to they're going to have the same problems during this particular change in action. The example that it comes to mind the fastest that I had written down was there was a time when there was IT went to a shared services model, and there were some struggles with how they connected with departments and changes that had to be made after the shared service model went into effect. And what I am gathering from constituents is people want reassurance that these questions and that these struggles that have already happened in previous years are being accounted for now so that they won't happen. That administration and HR are learning from their past mistakes, and they want to feel that confidence that it won't happen again. So I guess it's more of a statement. I don't know if that's a question that can be addressed. Have the issues that took place in prior restructurings or prior environments, are they being looked at and accounted for during this change?
So I'd love to be able to open it up for others to be able to make sure that we do lend our ear to that, to be able to make sure. The difference between this is we're not centralizing, we're creating shared services. I think the last one they were centralizing, so individuals were being pulled back in, right? As opposed to having those individuals still sitting there, just a matter that they have a more defined role. So it is a little different, but I don't know if there's other lessons learned in the 2016 that are worth bringing up to be able to make sure that we can account for those now to ensure that we still replicate it.
But if we're not centralizing, it seems like we are, if college band, use the example, right, for departments have their 2 people and the duties are distributed however they've decided within the program that works best for the employees. One likes to finance, one likes to hire, but if we're changing it to this new model, it actually is being centralized. Because then what's happening is the duties are gonna totally change, right? For the most part. Will programs have that, still have their people? So people meaning like, you know, the face of you have your 2 people that do the various duties that keep the program in the running. Will they still be tied to that program, or will they be centralized in the sense of like finance, you roll up to finance, and you're just processing. Are you processing your department's things still and managing them the way that they're doing now? And if they are, then what's the change that is happening?
Yeah, so the only difference would be we wouldn't be processing like we are now, we'd be processing them, and this comes off wrong, so this is a general term, but we'll be processing them appropriately. So what happens is downstream is where things break in regards to when we work around the system or against the system and or however you want to look at it. That's where the majority of the university's time is spent to be able to fix those. So to your point is and we just need to be able to agree on the definition of centralization, right? So they're not coming up to human resources. I'm not a fan of the term central, but if I look at central human resources, take our recruiting individuals, which are really just an extension of the unit or the college right now. They don't have the bandwidth. They're just transactional to be able to process what comes through from colleges and such, and or to be able to educate individuals that only do 1 or 2 requisitions a year to be able to make sure like, hey, come over, we can sit down, we can walk through this. You can do it in 20 minutes as opposed to you spending a day or 2 kind of start and stop and so on and so forth, since the system doesn't allow us to be able to save. So from that standpoint, that's how I would define central. The other individuals are still in the units. The only thing I can tell you is yes, for the most part, those individuals will be working for the same entities as bandwidth becomes available. In regards to some of the support functions that we need to be able to work on, they may have some additional tasks or responsibilities. So we'll pick on honors or hobs or something to that extent. You know, we're going to need to figure out of how we buttress up on some of the budget and finance and human resources side to be able to make sure that they're, you know, let's say hiring practices are taken care of, which may be few and far between, but still would need some assistance from that standpoint. So we may have an individual in Gassner that has like some responsibility to be able to assist with that as well.
So if you're, let's just use finance then as an example. If you're doing finance for the department, you've been doing it, and so you're doing it every day. So it's not like HR where you like do it randomly.
Sure.
So they're doing the P cards and purchase orders every day and making contracts. Their duties won't change. They'll still be managing the finances for the department or program and still be doing those duties.
Just maybe the way in which they're doing the duties that changes.
So then that brought up the other thought, and when we had talked before, we had said like finance level 1, doing certain cards to learn that as a career ladder, and then when you take on purchase orders, additions of cards to make it to a level 2. That would seem like it's following the way we're talking now, where you're still in the program, the department, and you're doing all the finances, you still manage those for those department and program.
So just so the rest of it, I don't know that I could ever see that we'd have an employee that's just doing e-cards, right? So they may be doing that entry level finance and budgeting aspect and learning some of, let's say, procurement may be at a higher level, but they're still learning in regards to that. So to your point is if we look at director of business ops or the like, depending on, unit and such, those individuals are mission driven, right? So that's the right hand person to the dean or the director or whatever it may be. And so realistically, what we're doing is we're looking to be able to take those transactional pieces. And we'll stick on the finance side, transactional items from budget and finance to be able to be happening within these shared services, to be able to provide new and regimented reports up to management. Director of business ops would still do the interpretation at the go from a college perspective, the college interpretation to those and the institutional knowledge and such for the dean to be able to make data driven decisions. So the tough part is that if we try to compare it to current day doesn't exist, right? So we know we need to be able to create those efficiencies, and how we create those efficiencies dictates what those positions do.
So because we did talk about that in the last meeting, we said someone would strictly be just, that was the example, we said we did do just do P cards for the year. So that will happen.
Yeah, so we could have
We thought that was the case.
we have a budget
Yeah.
finance 1, 2, 3, however we need to be able to have that career progression. To your point, what that position looks like would just be, they'd be different scales of each other in regards to knowledge, skills, and abilities. So some of that would be gained over time. But to your point is if I was processing P cards, I couldn't keep myself busy for the whole week.
Depends what program you're in.
Well,
I mean, you could-
depending on the number of people, right? So, but just meaning though, if I have 5 ones, or if that's where our entry level is, and that's where we're bringing people on in the future, just talking hypothetically, yeah, I mean. So if it was interpreted that way, it was more of a general comment in regards to, we have to have a finance and budget 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that's what we're building right now in regards to those responsibilities, education, and so on and so forth. Because I think one of the big pieces is to be able to move up on a career ladder, there's 2 things we need to look at, right? So there's either time and seat, which can't be the only factor, and we have to have mastery of task. So how we define that is what we need to do. So I could sit there and say, okay, to be able to move from a finance 2 to a finance 3, I need 2 years in that position, but I also need to master these tasks. I may not master those tasks for 3, 4, I may want to be an individual contributor at a finance 3, and that my goal isn't to be able to move forward. And so those are the different pieces that we're building in regards to those career ladders as well.
I had a question first, and then I'm gonna, so sorry, what was your name again? Rebecca, then Nicole. So one question I had was, will deans and directors be given training on the upcoming implementations to help answer questions that their direct reports might have, since oftentimes these are people who work with one another for a number of years, have good communicated relationships? I was just gonna ask, are there gonna be like a hands-on training for the deans and directors that will them to do, so that when this happens, inevitably there are speed bumps in the road, that they can potentially help answer any concerns or questions from their direct reports?
Sure, so we're almost finished with the strategic communications with the deans. I think there's only 2 left, and one of them's right after this. And so from that standpoint, I think some of those deans are already communicating. We've got a meeting this afternoon with the deans again, total, to be able to kind of work through some of that. So we're still working through the implementation specifically, which we should have here in the next 2 to 3 weeks, if you will, kind of have a hammer down. But at that point, then it really comes down to all the questions that everybody's looking for is, who's this impact? When are we gonna know? How does it impact all of those type of things? I don't.
Okay, so you are talking with the needs, so.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So we met with the deans originally, which was great, kind of like this, just from a question perspective. We need to, I think they used a different terminology in regards to for the number of cliffs in Wyoming, we always drive off on with these type of projects. And so from that standpoint, it's that we hear that, right? We need to be able to make sure from the board perspective that nothing drops, so that there's nothing that falls in between the cracks. I think we had some great conversations in regards to that, in regards to when we look at accreditations and so on and so forth, to be able to make sure, and so we're looking for more of those type of things. Had a great conversation with graduate education to be able to sit there and say, boy, this actually leverages, we can actually do graduate education or GA hiring better, to be able to make sure that it doesn't, that breaks down on all kinds of different levels and creates a lot of kinks within the systems, both on the academic side, on the human resources side, and then student experience as well.
So the first is, how do you take those employees that are here today and place them in this ladder? Is there gonna be some kind of a testing system? Because everybody that is, whatever job occupation, they are not the same. So,
Meaning a business manager in one school is different than a business manager in another school, and or business manager across.
and your capabilities, we see that in our college, some of us know how to do a lot of things, and some of us only know how to do things.
Sure.
So trying to figure out how do we place the best person in each rung of the ladder, I guess. And then, so if you have that, do you know how that's gonna look? Do we?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of moving pieces there that we need to work through to be able to make sure that we're equitable and we don't have any unintended consequences. Where I'll go though is, so in each of these, human resources and budget and finance will have service level agreements with the areas, right? So we'll have, let's say for human resources, it's easier for me to pick on us, is we'll be able to say this is what's being delivered, the timeframes and so on and so forth. From that standpoint, the training is going to be important in regards to this. So to your point, individuals that may not have that knowledge should gain that. We'll be able to ensure that they can gain that knowledge, and or we'll make sure that we, continue to kind of work through that to be able to work through knowledge, which comes with the experience and how we're presenting at the office and those type of things. So in regards to how we place people on career ladders, we've got probably about 3 or 4 different ways that we're working through right now. But to your point is that's mostly by title as opposed to knowledge, skills, and experience within those realms.
We go that way, if you're going by title. Are you going to job audit positions? Because
Are you
been here a
saying,
very long time. We used to only have very few job titles, and we still have a lot that sit in these office position, office assistant, office associate. They do not necessarily do finance still, so that becomes very tricky when you're trying to put them into these 3.
and so when I look at office associates, at least 2 of the last colleges I've been in, they have said they're pivotal to student success, faculty success, their that presence and so on and so forth, to your point, not in that finance or in the human resources realm. And so those type of office associates and office associate seniors and such become mission driven as opposed to in the scope of budget finance and human resources.
Besides the mission driven. Is this at HR, is this at college?
This is the deans, right now, the deans are the ones that are sharing with me in regards to they don't do budget and finance. They are on that mission side of things.
I guess that too is what happened to the daily tasks and those. And I don't think I'm capable, like business managers, you come in all the time and how do you do scheduling classrooms, custodians don't show up today, we call, leave the building, you know, all of the day-to-day tasks. Where do those end up into? Because if you're gonna, are you gonna have somebody that's gonna sit in the department with the department head to help with those daily tasks? Or are they going to be in these three different categories, HR, finance, and research?
So this is where your mission driven individuals are. So those individuals don't change any reporting structure and to that extent. So two,
I think it's important. That part out.
so like here, I guess it all, right? So if I walk out of a restroom and the toilet's continuously flushing, hopefully that I'm just taking care of that. So, okay.
And yet, no, faculty don't take ownership of the building. And don't. It falls on the staff to make those pieces up.
Gotcha. And so in all of these, there are these mission-driven individuals that we like to talk about for accreditation, and so reports and such may come from those shared services areas, but there's still plenty of those individuals that are still within the units. So we just need to make sure that we identify that as well.
Rebecca, did you have anything else? I guess not Nicole and then Molly.
We've spent quite a bit of time, and a lot of our questions that we've presented to you over both this session and the previous one have had a lot to do with the shared services model. Because a lot of us fall within that realm, so it's easy for those of us that are asking the questions to think that way. However, it has been brought to my attention that we have not asked enough questions about the community of practice model or the distributed model and how that's going to affect those members of campus that are going to fall within those areas. There's a bit of a misconception right now on campus because I think we have focused so much on the shared services model that that's where everything's going to land and everybody else is being ignored.
Yep.
So can you speak to how career ladders are going to be, how are career ladders going to be built in the other two models, the distributed model and the community of practice model, and how are their roles going to change? Are their duties going to change? Or is it just going to be pulling the finance HR piece from them and then building up the rest of their job description? Can you speak to those two models specifically?
Sure. So we're going to start with the distributed model rethought it. So that's the model that we have now. So to your point, realistically, the only changes there is those individuals, and this is the mission-driven side of things, is that budget and finance are being kind of pulled to be able to be done in these transactional individuals, the shared service side, which then opens up their ability for more of that mission-driven. Unfortunately, it sounds as though that may be for clogged toilets as well as being able to move the university forward as well. In regards, and we can go even further into that as well. The communities of practice, just so that we're all on the same page there. So communities of practice, there's nothing that changes. What we're saying is that we have, that's in regards to the space, the reporting structures, or anything to that extent. What we're saying is we'll pick on advising, for example. We've got advising across colleges, we've got advising within ACEs and so on and so forth. So how do we bring these communities of practice together, both at the high level as well as across the whole campus, to be able to say, okay, how do we fruitfully debate best practices in regards to advising? Here's where we're going and advising from a best practice perspective, and here's where the college business is, and here's where Kasner is, and here's where engineering areas. And how do we learn from that? What I've been encouraging, so this is completely outside of Bob, right? But it is how do we flip the script on this, you know? So does that mean that we have an advising summit every year that we bring everybody together and we're talking through enrollment management, what the demographic cliff looks like for next year and how we're going to do X, Y, and Z, right? So everyone's starting from that same vision as we move forward in regards to our advising. Doesn't get to central advising, doesn't pull individuals out of their areas, it's purely just an area for individuals to be able to get together in regards to subject matter. We've got some individuals that have embedded marketing individuals as well, and so that's the same thing. So we're highlighting everything from enrollment management to advising to marketing. You know, some actually kind of just get built inherently through this. So how do we have, is there a community of practice in regards to human resources or budget finance in regards to those individuals that are now coming in to be able to say like, okay, where is my safety net when I need to make a phone call? Obviously, we always have it available, if you will, back to that central side of things for exceptions and such, but we want to be able to make sure that people feel welcome to be able to ask questions, to be able to.
So how do career ladders work in that model? It's easy to see it in the shared model because you go from level 1, level 2, level 3. But how does the career ladder work in the other two models, in the distributed model and in advising? Is there an idea that's centered out there?
So there's all kinds of ideas. So if you look at it as and this can go either way. So let's take it from advising. Do you start in a college and that's where you cut your teeth and you learn, or do you start in ACEs and you get this training on a general basis for the university for undecided and so on and so forth? And maybe there's an advising 1 and 2 there, and advising 3 moves you into a college, you know, or however that may work, and then you kind of move from that standpoint. So it all depends on kind of where we want to start from that standpoint, in regards to how we build it. So if it goes the other direction where it's like, okay, we got our teeth in and our entry level is in the colleges, and as you gain experience in a specific college, then you have the ability to move over to ACES that has a larger breadth. Those are the conversations that we're currently having.
So
it's a similar, so yeah, advising 1, 2, 3, 4.
you advising what you're. Is the implication that you would have one specific unit on campus that would always be taking the brand new employees?
Just that.
And some of these higher ups would only be accepting people that were transferring up through the career ladder?
Is
Is that what you're saying?
in a perfect world, it would be, if we would sit there, and again, I'm picking on ACES, but ACES doesn't have that many people that are just on the advising side of things. They have multiple roles, so we wouldn't have that, we wouldn't have enough candidates, if you will, to be able to flow through the system. That's it.
Jean, sorry, I'm so sorry, I forgot your. And my apologies, and I saw your, and first, let me go to G, then May.
Okay, only was in between.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry, Molly.
Okay, I just had to, yeah, thank you, President Cohen. I had a person wondering how this affects jobs like custodians. For example, we keep to Nicole's point, we keep talking about office or advising. Will it also be affecting custodial positions at all?
No.
Not?
Most of operations, it would just be those people that are doing human resources and or finance.
And so the ladder for custodial 1, 2, and 3 will be exactly the same? Or?
No, we'll continue to look at ladders. So ladders are just kind of like a subset of all of this, right? So even if we put things in place, you know, for the fiscal year, we're gonna still have to continue to build career ladders across campus. You know, so it's one of those that are really interesting. I think we had that debate last time too, in regards to these business enterprises, custodians different than operations, different than the union, and how do we look at those? I think that's where we had shared of like, what is the education that we can provide in regards to you know, not counseling, but like identifying students in need and crisis, which is probably more of the business enterprise side of things as opposed to operation because they're not in the dorms. Those individuals in my experience are second parents to some of these kids, and they know when there's been a slight change in how do I insert myself and so on and so forth. And those are some of the pieces that I look at in regards to those career ladders, to be able to say, okay, to be able to get from R1, if you will, to a 2, to get to 3, we're really looking for you to be able to expand well beyond the custodial piece into how do I make sure that I have student success, which is what we're all, right? And how do we provide those opportunities to be able to there as well.
So the career ladders have to be kind of tailored towards the area. So I understand.
Yeah, and so I mean, we can generally say that a career ladder is 1, 2, 3, 4, however far we need to go, right? But it's a matter of what is that time and what are those tasks that need to be mastered to be able to move it. That's going to change for everything. That's not a one size fits all issue.
I only think that might be available to her.
Is there a time when those career ladders might be published? Do you have an ETA for those? So that people, rather than making their own assumptions, or if they're not being, if people aren't getting the communication and don't know the answers, it seems like the rumor mill tends to pick up and people start making up their own answers. So is there a time when we can expect to see some sort of documentation on what those career ladders will look like? We as campus as a whole, not just staff.
I don't know that I have an ETA specifically right now, but I'll work with the team on that. We've just launched a new job description platform that we're utilizing to be able to kind of help with the audits and to be able to make sure that they've got updated job descriptions for all of campus, which don't exist currently. And from that standpoint, that allows us to build those career ladders so you can visually see them right alongside of it. But we're still in the process of bringing all that in. Most of them are the admin side of things. But yes, they are. They'll work through everybody to be able to do that.
I don't know. HR even know everything we did?
Well, have you had a recent opening that we've had to fill?
Yeah.
So at those points, then usually then we get updated or revised.
The HR just puts the wrong, that's not.
How about us if you don't change what the description is, you were to leave it as it is?
Description is pretty fair, correct? Because that's on a general basis, easy to use on the, so there's a job description. So we can work through that.
So I have lots of things that I've been writing down here, too. And I appreciate some of the things because I've been able to cross them off as we've gone along, So one of my big things is people over processes, and I've seen that be a little bit of an issue on campus.
They do what, I'm sorry?
Like people, like my big thing is to have people over process.
Okay.
Right? And so, because that really does affect morale, and there's other places that I've worked with on campus where it is process driven. And I would hate for us to get to a point where this becomes a process driven and not a people driven process. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
And so is there anything that's being put into place that we can ensure that this is going to be a people process and not just a process? Are we talking to individuals before they are placed? Or is somebody making a determination top down is where they're gonna be placed? Or are they gonna have a voice?
It's
So some individuals have single paths, but there are a number of individuals that have multiple paths. So I think as we had kind of someone joked about last time is you've got individual campuses that are having everybody reapply for positions. That's not our culture, if you will, and to your point, that gets into the process as opposed to the people. There are some individuals, especially on the finance side, that's probably a little easier than the HR side, they're like, this is what they do, and this is, even now, they don't have a DHR, they don't have any of the human resources exposure and so on and so forth. I don't want to say that those are easy to say, like, yes, and that's what their career path is. So we will work through that in regards to how we work with the areas as we look at this. Majority of the institutions that we've read through, if you will, is that it does become somewhat natural in regards to where the tendencies are, especially when we look at the number of finance over the number of HR people that we're talking about it from that standpoint, but it's a good point.
So along with that, has there been any consideration for employees that are closing in on their retirement years, right? So if they are making a set amount right now, and then because they have a limited skill set, but they've been here a long time, they're at a higher rate, right? And if they then get put into like a level 1 or level 2, which could affect salary, is any of that being considered for employees that are aging out, for better, lack of better word?
Well, and I think it's larger than just retirement side of things. I understand what you're saying is in regards to, especially for the retirement side,
Right.
to be able to maximize their income as they transition to retirement. So we're working through the compensation philosophy right now in regards to how that would impact. I would like to be able to see that there is minimal impact, but one of those things that we're working through right now to be able to specifically say nobody's impacted or there's very little impact or something like this, where that's what we're modeling right now.
So, I don't know if this question was already answered and I just skipped, so who is making that determination as to where they're gonna fall into that category? I know we've talked about that it might be title driven a little bit. But are the deans and directors helping with that decision, or is it really title or?
Yeah, so the one piece that we've been looking at right now has been solely from the title perspective. And so in the conversations in regards to deans currently, it was more discussion, if you will. So we've taken the hierarchy as it sits, and we've taken out all like any faculty that just have faculty report, just try to get it down just to that staff side of things. Job still leaves faculty on that because there's some faculty, staff that report through faculty lines and such. From there, then we're able to identify those communities of practice to be able to say, okay, how do we make sure that these individuals are included as we kind of develop, or as not as again, when we pick on advising, as we find advisors by title, to be able to make sure that they're included in practice or marketing and so on. So from there, then we have those individuals that are mission driven, so like these coordinators, director of business ops, those type of things. And then we have those that we have for conversation. So that's everything from your business associates, your business managers, and so on and so forth, to be able to understand where they fit, if you will. And that's more in regards to, are they in discussion or are they not? So as we kind of talked about Kasner, in regards to a lot of those office associates are faculty student driven as opposed to finance and human resources. Therefore, they have more of a mission driven focus as opposed to not. So that's kind of where we are right now, is kind of limiting what's the impact area. Now, with that said, though, is if we look at some of the data that we looked at before to say, like, there's in humor meter 277 people that do some semblance of finance, and that comes out to be 94 individuals. So however we want to look at it, we're still looking at, we're probably impacting all 277 of those individuals. They're either having their finance removed or that they're becoming a finance person. So that doesn't mean that their job changes or anything, but just being, there is downstream impact to quite a few individuals. The number of individuals that actually have that solid line change will be a lot less than that.
I'm glad to hear that because even just myself as an example, my title is a business manager.
Yeah.
However, I probably do 70% human resource work rather than the finance.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm glad to see that that's going to be looked at some point as well. So my other question is, how are the deans receiving the information? Are you getting warm fuzzies or cold pricklies from the deans?
That's a good question.
So if you would ask me a month ago when we kind of sat down and walked through it, I never got cold pricklies. It was a matter of, like we were saying, is let's not replicate anything we've done. Let's make sure we've learned from the past to be able to make sure that this is done appropriately. In regards to meeting with them one-on-one, and then I can follow up with you in regards to how this afternoon's meeting goes. But there are everybody's in various stages in regards to there's very little impact to me to there's no impact to me. And you're gonna actually have to provide some assistance to be able to fund yourself some smaller schools, colleges. To boy, we've already gone 90 or 80 or 90% of the way in regards to what you're talking. Now it's just a matter of this additional 10 or 20% to be able to, turn on more options to be able to help speed up hiring and those type of things. Those ones probably are the more great conversations, learning a considerable amount from them. Those are probably the ones that perceive that they have or have moved to this model already, minus the solid line to budget finance or human resources. Those ones are probably going to be a little bit, I don't think they're going to be difficult. Everybody is supportive. Everybody knows what we're trying to do. But people are at various points in regards to, just make it happen.
And thank you for your time today. And I just have one more last quick question. Last time it was hiring as usual. Is that still the case with bringing in an office admin? Interviews in mid-March, which is about the time frame in which you're thinking you might have something out.
Yeah, this is not slow down business.
Okay.
Yeah, not at all. So please continue. And however we can support, don't hesitate.
Megan, you said.
Sure, so this is actually Dan's question. So we were instructed to keep posting, interviewing and filling positions. How will the new staff be informed about how their jobs are changing? At which stage? And is that the department's responsibility, HR, during the onboarding? At which?
And that's part of our implementation piece. So that's what I'm working on right now in regards to how do we inform all of campus, right? So those individuals impacted, let alone those individuals that will be joining us. So I don't have a clear answer for you on that one, but it is. I appreciate the question. We'll make sure that we continue to do that well.
And as we're talking about career ladders, if there's somebody who is external but has multiple years of experience in another institution, would that be taken into account? Or if there's somebody who's like, oh, this is really interesting, like I was doing finance, like for some of it, and I like that, but I really want to try my hand at like something more mission critical or HR, like, do they still have the right to apply as a candidate if they decide like after the implementation, they maybe like want to change direction and there's opening in another department?
Yeah, no, that's a fabulous question. So I think the one thing is we're moving away that we have, a jack of all trades, right? And we're getting to the master of one, if you will. But what that also allows us to be able to do is to open up that time for professional development, which hopefully happens now, but unfortunately, I don't think it does as much as we would like to, or as regimented as we'd like to see. So from that standpoint, then we would encourage individuals. I mean, we want you to be able to find your passion. We want people to be able to enjoy what they're doing, be able to make sure that we continue towards our students' success. So most definitely those would be open for individuals. And again, it's a good question because where my mind is going, just talking out loud, is how do we create trainings for those conversions, right? So if someone says, hey, this is great, I love finance, this is where I've always been, but I'd really like to be able to get over to the human resources side. What is hey, why don't you take these X number of courses through your professional development this year, and then let's kind of make sure that we're on the same page as we transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a second.
So if you do that type of training, how does that would a person do that? You're in finance and you want to go into human resources and you're into these professional development courses. Is that something that a supervisor would do? Or how would we do that?
That's a good question. I was just talking out loud, so
Right.
yeah.
How would somebody that, I guess you could, put on a resume, is that something like LinkedIn? Is that?
Some of it would be LinkedIn, some of it would be a matter, I mean, all the training has to change, period, right? So if a person's in budget and finance, it's gonna be a completely different budget and finance than you're used to right now. If you're, same with on the human resources side, you know, so those individuals that are sitting, and I can just speak to HR a lot easier, you know, they're going to understand the hiring process and how that works in regards to how the matrix works and all those type of things, that they're the main owners of those within the colleges and units, if you will. And so it is a different depth in regards to knowledge and need for functioning, if you will. You know, so if someone, I mean, a lot of the employee relation things that we get, you guys probably see 3 months before we see it, at a time in which that we could probably have handled something like, manager, you need to go talk with your employee, that's what's missing, you know, or whatever it may be. So there's some of those things that we just don't get until it bubbles up. Of which that if we are able to get to them sooner, because we've got a person there, not saying that that person has to do employee relations, but they need to be able to understand what employee relations is.
Right.
How to engage and then when to be able to move it up so that one of the employee relations can get involved. But a lot of times, the items that we get could have been solved at the manager level 3 months before it hit us.
So if you're in a position where you want the ladder system and you grow, right? Then you see another position that was only there for this different area. Is somebody in your area gonna get more consideration to stay there? Or like, I wanted to go over here, just because it interests me and I've got a lot of experience there. Are the people in that area are able to go up the ladder before anybody can apply? Or is it only?
So let's give it a little bit more substance to it. So if
So if I was going to.
I've got an HR two and I want to go like in,
Well, what if I was in HR and I don't like that?
Okay.
I don't like finance. I like it. And I want to go somewhere different.
sure,
But there's people in this area that are already doing the ladder, taking the training, and so forth, but I already have the experience. Are people going to different jobs having to compete with the people in there doing the ladder?
okay.
Or because of my expertise, I mean, how are,
So let's define the ladder here.
Okay.
There's 2 different ways that this can work, and I don't have an answer of which way we're at right now. So ladder could be in regards to, I'm an HR one, and I'm waiting for an HR two to be able to open up on campus that I can post and go to that, and that's kind of what you're referring to. My personal opinion is I don't see how that benefits us. Now we have people that don't have longevity, and I think, you know, as we're talking about it, like, you need to understand some of the financial coding and all that, like, so how do we do that? Second piece is if I'm in an HR one and I've met let's humor me here, 2 years in position and master these tasks, and I've done that in 2 years, or I've done it 3 years, then I automatically move up. And so therefore, it's not a matter of, it's a matter of that once I have this and I'm evaluated, I move up. And so therefore, then it's not a matter that your question's more of, if there's an open position, how do we fill it? Those will still be, they could be competitive on campus, right, to start. Whereas right now, a lot of those are open up to be able to say, like, we'd like to be able to promote from within based on that knowledge, skills, and abilities. Does that help a little bit?
another great question. I know that we've all been trying to this case for change. But when I sent this to my constituents, I got 7 pages of notes.
Yeah.
They've never heard of it. And they're upset because this is the first time they've heard about this.
I can't even, we would be here all afternoon, because I came in this morning with 7 pages of notes.
People are worried about losing their positions, is it most business managers and financial people that are going to
Move in a certain area, and then how and who determines who's gonna put them in this position, is it gonna be fair, you know, all those things. And so, are we gonna do some type of presentation to the staff? I mean, these are the people we're talking about.
Yeah, so
And
this
they
is,
have no clue, and now we give them this case for changes. There's a lot of people that are confused, upset.
yeah, and I think the tough part there is there's a couple of, so one is that, it doesn't impact the majority of them, and so how do we put them at ease? You know, so that's the first piece that we're struggling to be able
Well, I
to
think
figure.
it would, because if you're doing a piece of this, a piece of that, we don't know where you're gonna.
Well, it kind of sounds, just to interject, sorry, but it just kind of does sound, it's one of my questions, that it's really only
Too vague.
it's only hitting the people who do finance and HR, wearing multiple hats in that capacity. You're staff in campus rec, or you work in Res Life, or you're not truly, maybe someone in Res Life would be affected, but like, unless you're doing HR or finance, you'd be mission driven to some extent. And so then I think it would come a lot of fears, because I also have many. They have no idea
With fears.
and are very upset. And
They've
said
never
that
heard of this.
they've not been, the answer was, are they not going to consult with staff on the feasibility of any of this? This is highly problematic in multiple ways. And I think that their voices, they're feeling that they're part of this change, but
gonna
they're
affect-
not, they've not been, have a voice in this conversation. They don't have a seat at the table. They've not been consulted to even get the different, like, we've learned a lot from just our meetings here.
Sure.
And I think that there should be some form, whether that be, and another member said to me that President Seidel said in his last town hall that staff would be consulted on this. And so that's what this constituent is going, basing it on, is that, why haven't we been part of this conversation? That's what the President said. So that's what you're up against.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
So I really, as senator, I'm not sure how to address. Because they're. And my interpretation, anybody else's interpretation is that we get the wrong outcome. We present to our constituents. I have some constituents that I work with, but it's in a college and I don't have the evidence. And those other people didn't even know how to see her. So we've got some inconsistencies here. People. How do I address all of these? One-on-one,
Have to. Okay, yep.
or we
Yeah.
share.
Well, no, but I think any feedback is helpful. From that standpoint, I look at feedback as a gift. It's one of those things that we have struggled with, and I'll work with Chad again in regards to communication, right? Because it's one of those things that if we over communicate, which there's nothing wrong with, but it creates more angst until we have the answers that they're looking for. So we are right now doing strategic communication. So I know a lot of those teams are taking the and kind of communicating from there, but I know that that's just the process.
I mean, we're here for staff, we're a voice for staff.
Yep.
But I think it would help ease a lot of staff if we had a workshop or a presentation for them to attend to understand these models. Because they're presenting them to me or other senators, but everyone has different concerns.
Sure. Right.
Or you can also give that, but
I'm happy to work with staff. Send it to me, let's set that up. We're happy to set it up.
well, I'm talking all staff.
Yeah, understood. But at that point, I mean, so like you said, you,
So much different things. Share all.
Yeah.
And they presented to me, I'm not even working that area. Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's.
Dean, is that your question?
No, I have several, sorry, but I do have several. So Bob, models 1, 2, and 3 that you use, how will seniority and factor pay into that? People who are already here. And like, and another question, which is also for business managers, there's only one level other than the executive. A lot of times, as I said to you before, we use that role sometimes as a director position too. So business managers don't have levels, so how will that be addressed for the people, myself, who's been here a long time, versus someone who else who's only been here a few years as a business manager, maybe slightly less than me after all these years? How will this be equitable and fair? And what will happen in these changes when we do these new models? Will there be levels of business managers?
There'll be levels of finance, budget, shared services.
Which your business manager, you could come in at one level, and be at another level, is that?
Correct.
It's kind of like you were saying to Ian's question. That would be, there would be like, kind of mastery at the time, right? It's not necessarily whether there's an opening, it's just that you're element, you're there. Are you compensated?
Say that one more time.
So you gave two examples of career ladders. One is,
Yep.
so that second, have those, the number of years of mastery, would you automatically move up into that position, ranking, I should say, ranking and associated pay? And with that, will there be impacts of changes in pay when people go out? You're a business manager now and you're making salary, however this structure is going to be. Does it mean that you could be put in a role where you're that level to this new structure would be less money? What happens to those people who are already at a higher level of what you're that role thing and sort of things?
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to the one, so we're working through that modeling right now to be able to, I want to be able to definitively say there's no impact to individuals or little impact or whatnot, so I can't tell you definitively right now, but that would be the goal, is that there's very little impact from a compensation perspective.
Because like right now, there's not, right?
There's what?
Because like right now, there's not your title, or if you're an office associate, you could become a senior and get a different level. There's not a business. You're a business manager, you're a business manager. Greatly. It's tied to your financial responsibility, and some of us have way more financial responsibility than others in their title. We're not being compensated for that. And then it's as though you're a business manager, I'm a business manager, my fiscal responsibility might be $60 million, yours might be 5. We're getting the same pay. That's not fair, right? So that's the things that have to be looked at.
So we're looking at everything from that to research dollars to the HR side, the amount of hires that are going in each place to be able to determine what do we need, how many people do we need in there, and so on and so forth. So that is all we have background.
So I think learning a lot from this meeting today, I feel better than when I came in here, because I did hear a little bit of what your conversation was with our dean. And I can tell you that it wasn't sitting well with me at all. I was
From last week or?
yeah,
from a month
last
ago?
week,
Okay.
last week. And I saw the color chart of where everyone is, and I don't feel comfortable with it, but I feel a little bit better hearing it from your perspective, and I also feel better in the sense that now I think constituents can feel better because it's really not affecting everyone. It's mostly affecting the people who are the multiple paths who are HR and finance, correct?
Agreed, but I want to go back to that. So I would agree with you there. But if we look at the finance side of things, we're saying that in that case for change, we said there was 277 individuals that were doing some semblance of finance or budget. So for all intents and purposes, those 277 individuals will be impacted in some way, meaning that they're having this one P card transaction taken away from them, or they are, business partner in finance and budget. So I want to, you're correct with what you're saying, but there is that downstream impact in regards to be able to get to mission or to be able to free up some of that transactional time. It will impact some of those other individuals. Minimal, but still, I just want to, just so that we're transparent there.
We get to choose. So from what I heard this morning, you choose between finance or HR, but if you're green, you're probably going to stay in finance unless you don't want to. But if you're finance and a little bit of HR you choose.
So if you're looking at the org chart, I wouldn't put stock in that, because there's a lot that changed through that conversation. So green is HR or finance on those org charts. So
Okay.
from that standpoint, that could go either way.
Okay, I did speak on, yeah, you're right, I did hear that, it's either or.
Yeah, and so in the majority of those, as we go through them, especially even there, it's a matter of like a office associate or something that's mission driven. So a lot of those greens are already back to blue, which would be that mission driven side of things. So that was our conversation document, not what we kind of walked through. And not that guarantees anything, but that's just so that we're calibrating on that.
And then who determines the level of work is like, so if I'm rolling up to finance and I'm doing what I'm doing, which is, and especially at this time, these last few months, budget season, I'm doing way more, can't even do my so-called normal things because it's all budget.
Yeah.
And I know that if you're looking at things to where we might pick up overflow for the mission driven, such as Bob and others, right? So who's determining the work, how much work we currently have on our plate? And how is that being looked at, I guess? Who's making those decisions?
Which decisions, that if you work for a house.
So like for us all finance right now, let's just say. We determine we're asked, we're gonna stay finance, rolling them, and so I will no longer report to my current supervisor, I'll be reporting to finance, straight line, whoever that may be.
All depends, so I just want to put a caveat there, because, so spans and layers would say that once you get past 7 people, you lose your effectiveness, right? And that's what we're missing here as well. I don't think a lot of the things that I hear, not in regards to this, or in regards to that, my manager doesn't engage, my manager. So we need to be able to make sure that we have those spans and layers correct as well. So you may be reporting to somebody or reporting to the same person you're reporting to now, they just may be a lead for budget and finance. If that makes sense. And then, so.
I was
because
wondering how that would be, because
You can't, if a person can't, if
how effective,
let's say that there's 90-some people in there, that,
and that person would have to do 90 performance evaluations as well.
well, that's sort of right, that's where spans and layers would come in and say that that's
Yeah.
not doable.
So
Okay.
I'm just gonna keep us all, we have about 12 minutes left. So I saw Nicole's hand and then Molly's, I believe. Read.
I think my last comment is fairly simple, but I think it's a very important one, and I think it's a topic that many people have in this room have touched on already today, but it hasn't been the focal point, and that's transparency. That seems to be a very big concern on campus. I've gotten a lot of comments, please refer, we don't like being told, please refer to the HR website, because then we have to do more work and go out and find it. What people, and we've also seen today that rumors can start if there isn't transparency. And all of a sudden you're addressing issues that really aren't issues because of the lack of transparency. So with all of the feedback that I have gotten from my constituency base and others, I think HR really needs to step up on their transparency and their communication to campus. I get that we don't want to give staff information that's not fully complete, because that may change or it may cause more problems. But staff on campus need to hear from HR, even if it's just portional, even if it's, we are working on this topic right now. And yes, they want details, but more importantly, people want to feel like they are in the loop and they have an idea of what's going on. So I think it's very important that there are town halls, or that there's more than just a little blurb in what's going on in UW this week that's coming out to inform staff of what's going on, because I don't think everybody's reading that.
And to speak on what Debbie mentioned earlier, I think a lot of times we can send information to constituents, the staff said, a lot of times there can be lost in translation. Some people want to see it directly from the source, so to speak. Not that saying centers, make sure you're talking to your constituents, everything, keep doing that. But as someone with my coworkers, they like to hear it from the source first and foremost to make them feel more at ease.
in a Q&A, they need us, they're gonna bring you information that you're gonna hear more.
Yep, I value that. So hear me on this question, just to be able to go. So obviously, this isn't an HR project, this is an enterprise project.
Yes.
But at that same point is, so where, how do we work together to be able to achieve that? Is it one of those things that, does it help, say, Staff Senate is hosting a question and answer in regards to this? Or is it better to be able to have the enterprise, for me to be able to set something up, right? Just questioning.
I think if, saying something along like staff sat along, or hosting some HR might. Sorry, did I hear something on Zoom? Okay, well, it might, having a town hall, so to speak, and showing the staff sense there might put some people at ease to attend, so that might be a good idea. I think also getting feedback from the people who will be impacted directly, like that is going to help a lot with.
It solves it all, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, to your transparency, if I can say, you're not impacted, you are, you're not, I mean, that it's one of those things like, okay, how am I impacted? Let's just, and then so, yeah. If I can get there, then that would be, that's what we need.
Right, and the other part is there's been a lot of talk about, we were told. And it's come from a couple of other people, that staff would be involved in these conversations, that there would be staff involved. And what I don't think a lot of people understand is there have been staff involved throughout the process. Maybe not every single staff member has been asked, but I think if there can be some way of communication, say, we spoke with 32, we spoke with 10 accounting associates and 4 custodians, or some way of not giving identifying information of those people, but some way of communicating from your level that there has been staff input that has contributed to some of this. That would be helpful, because what I'm hearing is that there's a feeling that there hasn't been staff communication because they don't know that because most people don't know which staff have actually contributed what.
So let's
Does
go,
that make sense?
it does, let's go a step further. So the thing is easily done, right? We can be able to, I still don't think that helps the person that's saying is, I want to know more though, right? To be able to say that staff has been involved, if they're saying, I want to be involved. And so I think it gets back to how do we allow all individuals to be present here and give voice as they feel
Yes.
appropriate.
Which goes back to the town hall. But I think just acknowledging that there has been staff involvement
Yeah.
would be helpful as well. And then increasing staff involvement moving forward.
It does, but it raises up a few concerns that people are saying, well, why is it just a select group? I didn't know about it. Why couldn't I have participated? I have something. Kind of get into that.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is so therefore, to your point is that doesn't solve the person that's asking the question, so we need to be able to invite all to be
I
able to know
think
that.
it's just important that everyone get to comment and hear there and answer questions and learn.
Right.
As they are too. Yeah.
I had a quick question from one of my constituents. Will salaries decrease for anyone?
I don't know that answer.
Okay.
So that's what we're not looking at. And then I can give a definitive update, yes.
Okay.
Hopefully it's.
Or maybe increase.
So we may not maintain yours. You won't get to keep your salary. You might not. You could potentially.
I would like to be able to say, yes, everyone will be able to keep their salary, but there's more to it than that. So I just need to define that before I can say that.
So with regards to salaries, similar to now, we have an office associate that might make it very beginning and one that's at the very end. Will there be salary ranges in the different levels?
So these positions will be marketed specifically against the matrix. So yes, they'll have a full range, understanding that matrix is a paradigm shift too. where we had an outdated matrix in which that hadn't changed for a long period of time, and so therefore individuals were accustomed to hiring to the midpoint. The midpoint now is market, right? So every position is marketed to be able to know what that is. So realistically, that minimum and or the top of the first quartile, bottom of the second quartile is higher than what we were hiring people in anyways. So there should be little, most people are already good with that. But realistically, the market gets back to our conversation. When the person comes in with years of experience and knowledge and so on and so forth, we hit the ground running. There's not going to be a lot of people that are hired at midpoint, if you will, or market. Yes, they have that.
Is this updated matrix as of 2024 or 2023?
So it is meaning,
I'm trying to. So which fiscal year, sorry, as the FY 24, FY 23.
so a matrix is a static document until it changes. So we did a soft launch with it and we're working through all the final pieces to be able to make sure that we can get it published on the web, to be able to make sure that we didn't have our normal issues with compensation structure when we had the last legislative dollars. So therefore, we gave market-informed merit increases, meaning that I worked with every team director or whoever, director of business ops, to be able to understand the markets for all those positions, to be able to make sure that we didn't get more out of skew with the dollars that we had last year.
Right, we have about 2 minutes left, so let's have one more question.
Like, my biggest fear I'm hearing from all of my group is, are we gonna be doing any more purging? They are all really afraid we're gonna be housing that we throw around our operations.
That nothing will be driven by this, so I would not be part of any conversations if there are.
What was it implemented at the University of Washington? How long did it take?
I don't know. I actually was just online pulling the VP's information there to be able to reach out to me to get some of that information. That's how I spend my evenings.
Because you're using them, right? You said you're using them as one of the closer models, because they're closer to us and.
So they were one of that Deloitte that provided us regards to that. Yep. And so to your point is I was interested to be able to reach out to be able to understand, because I think they've had some changes. My understanding is, but this is where I want to hear it from them, is they went to the model of everyone had to reapply. And so I don't think it went very well. So I want to be able to take those lessons learned, like we were talking about, to be able to make sure we don't duplicate any of their issues.
Go back to the people or processes.
Correct, exactly. Yep.
Okay, well, thank you very much again for your time. Thank you, senators, also for being here, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know you're hot, but we learned a lot. So
Yes. Yes.
You should bring it.
Is this Q1, 2 for Roseanne?
Bueno, I think that needs to be an eye.
Look at the decomp.